What's up, Bruins fans? I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. In this video, I'm going to let you hear the latest information surrounding Jeremy Swayman, as Swayman, the Bruins ownership, and now Elliotte Friedman had weighed in on it. I will also touch on some news surrounding Lucic, and the internet is upset about a list involving David Pastrnak. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you can drop a like and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated, as it lets the overlords of YouTube know that you like my Bruins content. I said it before, I wouldn't talk about Jeremy Swayman unless there's something to talk about, and I feel there is now, so I apologize in advance if you don't want to hear about it. The good news is, in my videos, I've timestamped them, so you can jump ahead if you'd like. We had multiple people speak to the Jeremy Swayman contract, including Jeremy Swayman himself. A friend of mine, Dominic Tiano, did an article as well, saying that he thinks Swayman isn't going to get an offer sheet, and he gives us the reason why. I'm going to start with the Dom article on why teams haven't given Swayman an offer sheet, and I suggest you read it. Here's the Coles notes though. I'll drop a link down below as well. Swayman is looking for a long-term deal, as it's rumored, so any team would have to offer him a 7-year deal to entice him to leave Boston, and he would need to sign him to a deal that Boston can't match. Teams aren't going to overpay for Swayman though, and the cost also would be high for any team. Say a team offers anything over $8.6 million that the Bruins have right now currently in cap space. The compensation would be a first and a second and a third round pick. If they try and price the Bruins out and go to around a $9.16 million contract, it would cost them 2 firsts, a second, and a third round pick. According to Dom, the Bruins could go up to a 22-man roster and free up additional cap space to have a total of $9.4 million to $9.6 million, depending on who they send down. So thank you, Dom, for clarifying that any offer sheet is just highly doubtful at this moment. Elliotte Friedman dropped a surprise 32 Thoughts, the podcast, and had this to say about Swayman.
Kind of looking at, I had some Bruins fans asking me about Jeremy Swayman. Why didn't the Bruins take him to arbitration? Well, first of all, Swayman wouldn't do it because you'll remember last year he said he didn't like it. So he didn't want to go through that again. If the Bruins had taken Swayman to arbitration, one thing they knew what would happen is if the team takes the player to arbitration, the player gets to select the term. And Swayman could have selected a 2-year term, which would have walked him right to unrestricted free agency. And the Bruins aren't dumb enough to fall into that trap. They were not going to let that happen. So, look, to be honest, I'm not bugging too many people right now. The last I heard, they weren't close. I think this has been a bit of a challenging negotiation, but they've still got time, and we'll see how this sorts out.
Freeman says he hasn't heard much lately, and his news is kind of old because it sounds like the same stuff he talked about closer to the draft. His bit about the Bruins not bringing him to arbitration because it would allow Swayman to choose the term was interesting, and I do wonder if the Bruins could have picked the term, would they have brought him to arbitration, even though Swayman has made it clear that he didn't like it last year. Negotiations seem to be tough, and I have mentioned before that Swayman's agent is one of the toughest in the league, so I think the Bruins would have brought him to arbitration if it meant it wouldn't bring Swayman to UFA. Charlie Jacobs, who is the CEO of the Boston Bruins, was on a Boston radio show and had this to say about Swayman. I try not to comment on players' personal contract negotiations. We are still negotiating with Sway. I hope that he's ready to play come training camp. We have some things to work out. I'm sure we'll get there. To me, it's a bit of a nothing burger because he really isn't saying anything of substance, I feel. He is saying he wants Swayman a Bruin and he expects him to be at camp, but I don't know what he could say at this point. Finally, I want to end on what Swayman said himself because I feel his comments are the most important. Swayman was on the Nesson Jimmy Fun radio telethon and had this to say about his negotiations with the Boston Bruins. There's a lot of confidence, and I say that because I've treated it like a business as usual this year. I've been at Warrior, I've been working out with our guys, our staff, our players, and I know there's something special building in this locker room this year, and I can't be more excited about that. I know that it will take care of itself with time, and all I can do is control how I'm going to be a better goalie for the Boston Bruins this year. So that's all my focus on now, and I know again it will work out. And I couldn't be happier to be a Bruin. Swayman sounds like the constant professional here and someone that wants to be a Boston Bruin for a very long time. A lot of times, these type of negotiations, the players let their agents handle everything and aren't involved as much as we think they are. Everyone that speaks about this in the media, and even Swayman himself, tells the two sides will get a deal done. But by training camp is anyone's guess at the moment. Bruins came down to the wire and met David Pasternak's asking price a couple years ago, and maybe they will do the same with Swayman. I wanted to mention so many people have spoke about the dollar amount Swayman is looking for, and what the Bruins are offering. And after doing a ton of digging on this, all the numbers out there have been guesses. No hockey insider has given a number, but given what they think he's asking for. The Bruins have 8.6 in cap space, so I think there's plenty of room to get this deal done. You let me know your thoughts in the comments on the Swayman contract situation and what you're thinking now about it. Now, I also wanted to touch on the news that former Bruin Milan Lucic has been training in New Jersey and is eyeing a comeback, according to Frank Saravelli. According to Saravelli, sources say Milan Lucic has been in training in New Jersey this summer and is in an attempt to continue his playing career. Lucic is currently ineligible to return to the NHL. He was arrested in Boston last November for assault and battery, pleaded not guilty, and charges were dropped in February when his wife invoked marital privilege and declined to testify. Lucic took an indefinite leave of absence from the Bruins after the arrest and did not return to the team. His one-year contract expired on June 30th. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman would need to clear Lucic to play, even though he's not been formally suspended by the league. Lucic entered the NHLPA Player Assistant Program. Now, I don't think there's any chance he's a Boston Bruin ever again, but I wouldn't be surprised if the NHL let him back in the league. When the NHL decided to let Stan Bowman back in recently, it made me think the NHL will forgive almost anything. The charges against Lucic were dropped, so I'm not going to speak to the incident, but if I'm a GM in the NHL, I wouldn't sign him. At this point in his career, I don't think he can add much to a team, and with all the media that would surround signing a player like that, it just wouldn't be worth it. You let me know in the comments if you would let him back in the NHL, or even sign him for that matter. The last thing I want to talk about is something that is getting Bruins social media in an uproar for some reason, which I'm sure is making the NHL Network very happy because they're getting clicks from it. The NHL Network released a list of top wingers in the NHL, and David Pastrnak is fourth on the list, but that isn't what seems to be getting people upset. What is getting people upset is that Matthew Tkachuk is second and higher than Pastrnak on this list. Kucherov is first, and he should be, followed by Tkachuk, Rantanen, and then Pastrnak. I would think Pastrnak should be second, but I will admit I'm also biased and watch him play more. I watched Tkachuk a ton last year and during the playoffs and think he's a top 5 winger in the league, no problem. And I'm sure he is high up because of his cup, which shouldn't be a barometer for placing. But that's just my opinion. McDavid has never won a cup yet. We all know he's the best in the league, heck, in the world. Cups shouldn't be a reason for placement. Both Tkachuk and Pastrnak have a strong two-way game and can be game breaker in their own way. Pastrnak with his explosive speed and scoring touch, along with his underrated passing, and Tkachuk with his timely goals and presence on the ice, both have their reasons to be high on this list. I honestly don't care, though, that Tkachuk is higher on this list, because in the end, it really doesn't matter. But you let me know in the comment if this list bothers you, or if you don't even care at all. That wraps up today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.